Okay.
Your show.
Can we start? Oh, we're back. Can you hear me? Can you hear
I'm,
me,
I'm,
Ray?
I think we're fine. It's just one of those grips that we all get on social media from time when some gremlin gets in the line. It can be a cat
I
from
know.
occasion.
I call it the devil. So, okay, let me start. Let me start firstly by saying, welcome to the Goddess Jazzy show. Welcome to this edition. I'd like to firstly,
Is yes.
yeah. So,
Yes,
Ray,
that's
you are a
fantastic.
CEO. That's
That's
your Catholic.
correct.
Okay. You're a CEO, an equality civil rights broadcaster, a writer, and
Yeah,
activist.
that's correct.
Mm. Tell me more. Tell us more about you, Ray.
Well, I think really events really have shaped my
Yeah.
life. So I really started my life through the care system. So, I struggled in and out of childcare, children's homes, had a pretty awful time
Mm.
of it, really. And then as a teenager, discovered I was gay, which wasn't great in the 70s and 80s with the backdrop of AIDS. Ended up homeless
Mm-hmm.
on the streets of London, and then through my
Wow.
homeless and the AIDS pandemic, that really taught me about people. And so when I had literally nothing, it was always those that
Mm.
had the least that would give me, their last penny, their last cigarette. They'd get off
Yes.
their bed and let me sleep in their bed because I hadn't had a bed for like 2 months. And so it was that
Mm.
sort of realism of people's of struggle and solidarity, which really shaped
Yes.
my activism my entire life, really.
So,
Um,
um, can I ask you before you continue, Ray, how did you end up in the care system? Did your family break up, or how did you get
well,
there?
I'm okay with it. It's all a bit surreal now, but my
Oh,
mother was raped. So when I was born, I
mm,
was obviously in the 1950s, abortion was illegal. And my
mm,
family, which is sort of something that's traditional in African culture, really, that my mother was
yes.
sent away. My grandmother pretended to be pregnant, and then when I
Oh,
popped out with my mother materialized. My mother was always to be my sister, so I was raised that my grandmother was my mother and my sister uh, was my sister, not aware until I was
yes.
about 13 that my sister was my
Wow.
mother, and that led to all sorts of problems and family conflicts, which led to me very often having to go into care because the family internal issues around being born to a woman who's raped was very difficult. So although my mother, and now we're in contact with her. Out of the blue, after 57 years, my mother sent me a Facebook friend request, and we're now rebuilding
Yes.
that
Did you
relationship.
know it was automatically her? Did you know
I
it was
did, yes.
automatically her, Ray?
I did.
You did,
I
yeah?
did. It was just the
Wow.
name, and so I knew the name. So it's been a struggle, but the problem I think is like some of my friends and Tony, who's almost family to me that we both
Yes.
had the same issue. But with me, I found it really
Mm,
difficult with my mother because when I was growing up, I had real trauma in my life. When I was homeless, when I was struggling with my identity, when I was struggling with
yes.
poverty, I needed a family structure. I didn't have that. So, I was very, it made
Mm,
me very strong and very powerful in some respect because I knew the only person I could count on was myself. I didn't have a mother, I didn't have
yes.
a structure. And then when I finally reached out, and I had two half brothers that my mother went on, and she married, and
Mm.
she had two brothers. And out of the blue, my one of my half brothers popped up, and we started to build a relationship. And he had
Oh,
children who had grown up, and those children have got children. And I went to spend
yes.
one Christmas with my brother, and suddenly I was a stranger in the room. And so, as a child, I was always
Mm,
being that child that was hidden under the stairs. I was the family secret. I was, the black sheep of the family. And suddenly, in my
yes.
50s, I'm at Christmas with my brother, and all of his children and all of his, family network I had missed out with. And the reason I'd missed out was because of my mother. And so I found it really, really challenging. So although I have a relationship with my mother now, I don't see
Yes.
her as my mother. It's blood, yes, but she's not my mother.
Ah,
Uh, because I have no affinity with her. Well, when I had crisis, she wasn't there. And now I lost that family connection. For my whole life, I prayed my mother would walk through my front door. I prayed
ah,
that she would find me on the street. And then
yes.
suddenly, when she actually walked in, it was 15 years too late. My brother had grown up, he'd had his children. I
Mm,
missed that family bond. And I was back
yes.
to being the black sheep in the family. And so even now, I'm struggling again with that family connection.
Yeah. Did you ask her any questions? You know, when you linked with her, did you ask her any questions? Did you ask her anything with regards to? I know what's happened to you, but did you ask her straight out?
Yeah, and not straight away. I said, look, if
No.
you want to be in my life, I'm a gay man, and that you've got to
Yeah.
accept that. And secondly, I said, what we're going to do, you're going to meet at my house for an hour and a half, and we're going to talk through what I feel and what I've been through. And you may have been the person who was raped, but I said, I
Yes.
paid the price of that my entire life. And people don't
Mm,
realize that in rape, yes, there is the woman who has had that terrible experience, but quite often there's a child born into that. And we as a
yes.
child, we're victims as well. And we carry that on our shoulders our entire lives. And nobody really talks about it, and nobody really understands it. And it took me 48 years to come to terms with that. And
And so
again,
did
there's
you?
no
You didn't have
counseling.
anywhere to go to
No,
counsel or
no.
so that impacted you very heavily. So did you see a niche while now growing up or grown up? Did you see a niche that needed that sort of support?
Well, no, because it was
No.
nobody would talk about it. I was a bastard. Being born
Mm,
out of wedlock was a family disgrace. The family didn't
yeah.
want to talk about it. In fact, quite often I was hidden away in my bedroom when people came round, so that people didn't even know who I was. And so there
Mm,
wasn't even a structure. I went to a boarding school because it was easier to
mm,
send me away. I was a problem child. I had all sorts of mental health issues as a child. I was violent. I was aggressive, and
yes.
I was abused quite consistently. And that trauma really was so obvious to anybody that worked in child abuse. But because I was
Yes.
seen as a problem child, whenever I went to my social worker, whenever I went to my teachers, oh, you're a problem child, you're a child of a single mum, you're a child of therefore you're the devil.
Mm,
And so
yeah.
children like me were never believed. I mean, now we have the big child scandals which are coming out 40, 50 years later. And there's
Yes.
lots of people like me. I'm not one of a big home where lots of children were abused. I was within a small household that was abusive towards me on many levels. And lots
God,
of people like me out there exist today.
today.
Child abuse is bigger a problem now as it was back in the 50s and 60s, and we don't really talk about it. And it's something that doesn't happen in our families.
So what do you think needs to change in order for that to um, be spoken about? I guess what you're saying is a little bit in the black family as well. There's certain things that happen that we just rub under the carpet, and I, how can I put it? What needs to change in order for people to be able to speak out their truth or speak out what's happened? What do you
I,
believe that is
I think
needed?
I think it's a wider issue about inspiration. I think all of us through our lives are
Mm,
taught to be inspired, that we have to be inspirational, we have to be
yes.
leaders. And I think the problem with that puts a lot of pressure
Mm,
on so many levels. At the end of the day, what we've learned through this pandemic is that
mm,
we all have mental health issues at different levels. We're now beginning to
yes.
talk and understand that. And we also need to have values. So we need to value each other through the,
Mm,
clapping for the NHS. We're suddenly
yeah.
realizing that, people that sweep our roads, people that care for our elderly in
Yep.
homes, They don't
Yeah.
choose what would be seen as an inspirational pathway. They do something which
Yes.
is socially, morally, humanitarian based and caring for
Mm.
each other. And that in our society, in most societies, has no value. And I think we need to think again about, for example, businesses should be thinking about not how much profit they make in a year and how much growth they have, but how they treat their
Mm.
workers, how their
Yes.
business model impacts on the environment and the communities in which
Mm.
they operate. In the same way as we
Yes.
as individuals, when we think about what jobs we want in our lives, we should focus on
Mm.
what makes us happy, what gives
Happy.
us
Yeah.
comfort, what makes us
Yeah.
proud. When I
Mm.
walk in my street, seeing my road sweeper clean my street, I'm grateful for him for improving my environment. When the dustman takes
Yes.
my rubbish away, I'm grateful that he's removing it so that I'm not having rats and foxes in my front garden. And so I think that what we
Yes.
need to do is that we all have value. We don't all have to have an apartment in Marbella. We don't all
Mm.
need to be millionaires. The love
Yes.
of somebody we care about, the love of our children and neighbors, the love
Yes.
of friendship is something that doesn't cost money. The act of kindness is not about money. It's
Money.
about
Yeah.
being a decent human being. And we need to go back to basics. And
Yes.
unfortunately, things like poverty has been, expanded rapidly during COVID. We've gone from 12 million in the UK in poverty by the government's own figures prior to COVID.
Yeah.
We're now over 15 million. We now have the hero Marcus Rashford, who's been campaigning
Mm.
successfully on school meals. The
Yeah.
right to food, the right to housing, the
Yeah.
right to have somebody responsible for the eradication of poverty. I now campaign. I've been successful. I made my money. I now retired and I do full-time activism. But, I
Oh.
still
Yeah.
see that we need a minister for poverty. We have a minister for everything in our government. We now have local
Yes.
authorities with ministers for COVID. We have government ministers for COVID. And yet more people would die tomorrow, today, and
Mm.
yesterday as a direct consequence of poverty than ever
Poverty.
will of COVID.
Absolutely.
And yet,
Yeah.
why don't nobody take responsibility for the eradication of poverty? Because it's something that economically costs us all. And the misery of it
Mm.
we see in our streets, our neighbours going hungry, the
Yeah.
elderly, the frail, the vets dying in the doorways of our high streets,
Yes.
and the
Yes. Yes.
queues outside our churches for food banks. And that's not
It's
acceptable. And
crazy.
that's why.
It isn't, and especially in such a rich country like this, it just doesn't make sense. I just sometimes when I'm walking, I think to myself, doesn't this country love its people? I don't know if that's the right wording to say, but is there no love that you see your fellow neighbor, your fellow person hungry? I can't feed everyone, I can't clothe everyone, I can do my little bit, but doesn't this country feel a sense of shame even?
It
Don't they,
doesn't.
is there no shame?
There's no. I think the
Crazy.
problem is the scale of it is so huge, and the issues are so
Mm.
many that we all as individuals are overwhelmed with all what's happening, and so therefore it's
Yeah.
very difficult to do your bit because your bit
Mm.
is feels so, like throwing a pebble in a lake.
Yes,
It
not enough.
disappears so rapidly. You feel almost isolated and alone and pointless to the point that it
Yes.
becomes acceptable. And it's almost as if the political establishment like the numbers of people in
Hmm.
poverty and the numbers in the
Definitely.
doorway as a reminder, for the grace of God go I. And therefore you will
Yeah.
work a little bit harder. You won't get into
Yes.
trouble because you do not want to end up in the doorways of Debenhams.
Yes. Oh wow. God, that's deep, Ray. That's deep. So, Ray, I'm gonna move on a bit to talk about what is the history behind Calf's Place. I read in your bio that you run Calf's Place. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah.
Yeah. And is
So
there any significance behind the name, firstly?
there's quite a lot. I mean, we talked a lot about Black Lives Matter, and I think
Mm.
the Black Lives Matter misses one really unifying link, And that is the
Yeah.
history and the connection of working class women, black and white, Jew
Hmm.
and Muslim, Christian and
Yes.
atheist. And in history, our history is written by white men, and they have done
Oh.
just a disservice to the black community as they have to women.
Mm.
And one of the big scandals in British society is that, when I was, funding my food bank, when I found people hungry, and I set up the largest independent food bank in 2014
Oh.
in Deptford, I didn't
Oh.
realise
I used to live there.
yeah, I mean, on New Cross
It
Road,
did.
it's now,
Yeah,
well, we
Roll
were,
Street.
yeah, yeah. But we were priced out. Our rent went from 7,500 to 32, and we had to close, even though the demand was extraordinarily high.
And you self-funded this yourself. You
We did,
self-funded it
yeah,
yourself.
yeah. I had
Wow.
a business then, and I used the funding from the business because of our diversity. It's
Yes.
very difficult to get funding. So when COVID kicked off in March, my experience with food was really needed, and my insurance and my connections to help all the COVID
Mm.
groups establish a network. And
Yeah.
so what I did was I used my experience to empower other community groups. I didn't work alone. I worked with Feed the Hill in Telegraph Hill. I worked with the Refugee Council. I worked with lots of
Nice.
different groups to empower people to get access to the food, to set up networks to support and help each other. And
Yeah.
prior to that, when I'd started the food bank, I needed to raise money. And even though I'm
Mm.
dyslexic, I wrote a book called Food Bank Britain, which was written to change people's perceptions around food bank and to deal with
Mm.
ignorance and bigotry around it. And then I
Yes.
discovered this woman called Kath Duncan, who had been a local neighbor of mine in the 1930s. And I went on this
Wow.
journey of discovery, and I spent 5 years writing a book, a biography of her called The Last Queen of Scotland. And that led to me
Hmm.
writing a play about her called Liberty, which is about her role in the British civil rights movement. And what I found extraordinary was that this woman called Kath Duncan, and now we carry her work through the Kath Duncan Equality and Civil Rights Network, and also
Okay.
our building, our food bank and community hub is called Kath's Place after Kath Duncan,
Yes.
was because
Right.
Kath Duncan was the most important civil rights leader in British history in the past 100 years. In the
Yes.
1930s, she led the hunger marches. She was part of the anti-fascist movement. She interviewed the
Mm.
Brits that went and fought in the Spanish Civil War. She was involved with poverty, anti-poverty campaigns, challenging slum landlords, challenging taxation of the poor. And in fact, she was the first civil rights case that went before the courts. The National Council
Oh.
of Civil Liberties, before Kath Duncan's case, had never had a court case, and it was called the Council of Civil Liberties. Because of Kath
Okay.
Duncan's fame in the 1930s,
Mm.
she was the Martin Luther King of her time. She used to dress huge rallies, hundreds of thousands of people. She was only 5'2". She was a Scot. She was shy. She did amateur dramatics to overcome her shyness. And
Yes.
she went to jail for what she believed. She was the first woman in Britain to be jailed, not because of what she said, but because of the impact of her words might have on the wider population, with the backdrop of the Russian
Mm.
Revolution, the rise of communism.
Okay.
So the state was terrified of this woman. And so we
Okay.
hear of lots of women, whether it's, Rosa Parks, her action on the bus, Martin Luther King, the
Yes.
civil rights. But what is
Yes.
shameful about Kath Duncan is that we know so little about her because she was born to, a single mother. Her father died when she was 5, so she was raised by a poor woman and with her sister. She was a communist, and she was LGBTQ. So she had everything against her, and even today, it's still not cool to be a communist. And I still struggle with every sector to get recognition for Kath Duncan, because at the end of the day, whatever her politics, whatever her sexuality, whatever her economic status, what she did was extraordinary. Most of the women we know in history are famous for the NHS, famous for the National Trust, famous
Yeah.
for flying around in an aeroplane. Kath Duncan
Mm. Ray, hold that thought. Hold that thought, Ray. 1 minute. We're just going to go on a quick break and I'm going to come back. Just hold that thought, right? Okay, lovely. Have your tea. Okay. We're back.
We're back.
Welcome back. Thank you again, Ray, for joining me. Thank you for giving me that history on Kath Duncan. I never knew nothing about her. Imagine that. Wow. Didn't know anything. That's good. Thank you for sharing that info. So continue, my dear. We've got Facebook Live listening to us, YouTube, everyone's listening to us. So please share your information with me.
Yeah, so I think it's, you know, with, like I say, with Kath Duncan, it's just extraordinary that even today in 2021, we talk about powerful women, we talk about Black Lives Matter, but we still fail to educate our kids about the importance of women. And behind every great man, there's a woman. And we still have this issue. And I think the Black Lives Matter is really important, but it really needs to link more broadly with the empowerment of women. And I think that we don't do enough to recognize women unless they are married to some celebrity, whether they come from a good family or whether they are extremely rich or a pop star. And I think there's lots of extraordinary women in our communities that do extraordinary things. I run my charity with one of the Windrush generation, a woman called Barbara Raymond, who's a legend in her own lifetime. And she opened her home in 1976 as a food bank, and still in 2021 she's still feeding vulnerable women and children in, you know, 60, 70 years later. And
so,
you know,
Ray, can I ask you, do you think the work that you're doing, if you don't, sorry to interject like that, do you believe that the work you're doing is addressing the problem, or to some extent, what do you believe?
No.
Do you believe? No,
I mean, I think the problem we have now with food banks, and the same with the homeless issue, is that it's become too corporate. You know, it's now the third sector. People now make money out of foods. You can buy a food bank franchise now. All the people, what a lot of people don't realize is that food that you donate at a food bank or a supermarket is quite often sold, paid for. We food banks have to buy food. We get a discount, but even the food you donate to the supermarket is a cost involved. You know, if you get food from the Trussell Trust, you have to pay £1,500 a year to get a franchise fee. If you get Fair Share food or from the Phoenix Project, then generally you will have to pay a monthly subscription to access that food. And of course, with cafes and restaurants closed, there's not that mutual waste access to food. And what's become the norm, which I find alarming, is that people now see it as a career footpath. Instead of saying, let's eradicate the problem, we seem to be swapping Debenhams for a food bank brand. And that is not acceptable.
God.
And people don't
This is terrible.
it's creeping up on us all that we now, like you say, we accept the numbers of people in our high streets and in wherever you are in any community in Britain now, there is a
Yeah.
homelessness crisis, and we accept it because
Yes.
the scale seems so vast. We accept food banks. We don't realize now that many of the food bank charities have CEOs on six-figure
Oh my
salaries.
gosh.
It's
You know, I'm
become
really
big.
shocked about hearing that. I'm shocked. I'm totally shocked. So all the time I've been putting food in those baskets in Sainsbury's or what have you, there's a cost to it. What?
There is a cost. It doesn't
Shocking.
get given away for free. Anybody that wants to access any organization that needs that
Hmm.
food has to be a member of an organization and pay a fee to access that food. And of course, the
That's
supermarket's
crazy.
making money out of that food that you're buying with your weekly shop. And it's also
Yeah.
saving £40 a ton on landfill. So
Oh
a lot
my
of people are
God.
doing very well out of this. Thank you very much. And that's why
Yeah.
a lot of people try and close me down because
Mm.
I don't have a vested interest. I don't earn money out of this. I
Yeah.
don't, I might have a biscuit and a cup of tea. That's the
Yeah.
most I get from my work because I think it's really important in me to be a
Gosh.
successful activist that I understand the issues. I come from poverty,
Mm.
so I understand it, but also that I'm not corrupted by it in a way that I see it as
Yes.
a job and it's my sole source of income. And I think that's the
Wow.
problem, is that once it becomes your income, it
Mm.
silences people to be quiet about what's going on, and they make do with the role that they've got. Oh, it's a little job, I'm earning a few quid, or I'm getting, a free food parcel once a week.
Mm.
To me, the eradication of poverty is my life's work globally,
Yes.
not just within the UK. And it is, as Nelson Mandela said 16 years ago in Trafalgar Square, poverty is man-made and it can be unmade. And never was a
Definitely.
truer word said.
Definitely so. So also, Ray, how did you become you went into the House of Parliament, is it? You became an MP? How did that
No,
start?
I became a councillor. I
Or
mean, I was
a councillor?
I got on the
Hmm.
council. This is a funny story in Brixton during the Brixton riots. Really, this is where food's always haunted me. I was on a
Yeah.
bus in Kennington one day. This was, in the 80s. And I
Mm.
overheard a conversation where two people on the bus were saying there's a by-election for a local council seat in Brixton. But don't worry about it.
Right.
It's a safe Labour seat. So I thought, how can you presume that a seat is always owned by one party or another? How is that democratic? So I was only a
Mm.
young activist. So I went to Brixton. This area is called Angel Ward. It's now called Cross Harbour. And I
Oh,
just,
Cross Harbour.
I
Yes.
Cross Harbour, and it's Angel Town Estate, Loughborough Estate, real good groundbreaking area. And so I went there and I knocked on a few doors and I thought, hey, this is what I want to do. I want to be the councillor for this community. And one of the first things I did, I knocked on a tower block and I came across an elderly couple living in a flat where the water
Mm.
tank had burst and it had formed stalagmites over years and years and years. And this elderly Windrush couple in their 60s were living on a kitchen table where every night they would get a step ladder, put the mattress from the hall on the kitchen table, and that's how they were sleeping for 6 years. And so I was so disgusted by it, I got on Radio 4, the news program, the next morning, before I was even elected. And I said,
Yes.
this is not acceptable in Brixton. And on that one issue, even now, people in Brixton call me Moses because within
Mm.
48 hours, Lambeth Council had rehoused them. I then
Oh, no.
went on to be elected. I won my seat by 47 votes, which was the unheard of. It was like Labour's safest seat, predominantly a black seat. Traditionally, would vote, solidly Labour,
Yeah.
and I won it as a Liberal Democrat at the time. And then nobody said I could win it. It was just a paper candidate, and I knocked those doors and I won it. And then
Yeah.
I got actively involved in saying, we want a difference. I'm not going to sit back here and be a councillor and everybody call me councillor and that's it and take my allowance. I'm going to do something. And then we had the
Mm.
backdrop of the sugar and beef mountains in Europe. And so I wrote to the EU commissioner and said, look, you know, I represent a poor area in Brixton. I want your beef, I want your butter, I want your cheese, I want your eggs for my people in my community. Why let it rot in warehouses in Europe? So it's a bit of a flippant letter. And 2 weeks later, I got a letter from the EU saying, Mr. Walford, what would you, you know, how many people do you represent? And it was just over 17,600 people. I still remember it so clearly today. And so I wrote that, gave him the figure. And 2 weeks later, they said, oh, we're sending you 17 tons of food. And at the time, you know, this is, you know, the moment of the time, the local, you know, Labour Party was absolutely furious that I'd sidestepped the political system and I'd gone direct to Europe. And there was a House of Commons motion in the House of Commons calling for an investigation into how Ray Walford was bribing the people of Brixton with European food. And so there was an investigation by the Department for Fisheries and Farming in the House of Commons because this little boy in Brixton was trying to feed the people he was elected to serve. And the director, you know, the public, you know, it wasn't a public inquiry, but the House of Commons inquiry, final report said Ray Walford had gone beyond the call of duty to serve the people of Brixton. And that was, you know, it was quite wonderful. But the publicity around it led to me being targeted as, you know, I was one of the first gay politicians that was known to be gay and open about it. But I was also helping Black people. And so predominantly because Brixton predominantly was Black in the ward that I represented. You know, I represented everybody, but, you know, that was my casework was predominantly Black people. And so what happened was that I was targeted by Combat 18, which was a far-right organization at the time who were very violent, and they firebombed my house. They became
Were they like the NF in the 80s? Were they like the National Front in the 80s, the Combat 18?
They were the military arm of it, so they were like the IRA. So they were
my
doing
goodness.
bombs and things like that. And it was very aggressive. So they started off like putting excrement and stuff, like broke into my flat and they wrote horrible stuff all over my walls in my flat in Vauxhall, using real you know, excrement. And it got more and more violent. The more profile I got, the more violent, and until eventually I had to go into police custody for my own protection because I was on the 17th floor and my neighbours were living in fear. I had an elderly neighbour next door to me, and she was terrified about what was going on. And they had put out a nasty newsletter where they were saying I should be killed. I was on a list of lots of high-profile people they wanted to have killed. And the council, it meant I had to give up my flat. And I was moved into temporary housing. And then all this was the backdrop of me seeking re-election. And then the council one day sent me a letter saying they were offering me a new flat in Vauxhall. And so I went to the local housing office on Kennington Lane. It was 12:20, midday. And a car drove up behind me and two men jumped out with a gun and said, "Are you Ray Walford?" And I said, "Yes." And they said, "You're a queer FFFF," and started shooting me in the street. It was like it was so surreal that people in the street thought they were filming the bill and were standing around watching it. And
this was in the 80s.
This was the 80s. God. And fortunately I had an alarm and I heard the police, Kennington police station was closed. They were rushing to my aid. The guys jumped in the car and sped off. And just before they sped off, I turned around because I heard the police and a bullet just grazed my chin. So I got that close. And then bizarrely, we actually caught these people. And there wasn't, instead of being charged with attempted murder, because I was a gay man, they got charged with assault. One pleaded, went Queen's witness, so he said, I'll go against my colleague and say he was guilty. So he got off. And the other one got 18 months for attempted assault instead of attempted murder. And but of course that meant that I couldn't run for office, so I lost my seat. And that brought my into, very high profile period in the midst of, Brixton riots. I was part of that period, one of those generation of councillors. So food was really important to me at that point, because obviously,
Yeah.
you know, the butter mountains, the beef mountains have played a huge role. And food has sort of haunted me like women through my life, and
Mm.
really shaped who I am. And so
Yeah.
you know, Brixton is still in my heart, and there's lots of similarities with Deptford, and Deptford
Yeah.
is in my heart. And you know, I've stood many times in Deptford for election. I've never quite pulled it off as part people before profit. I now don't do
Mm.
party politics. I'm disillusioned with politics generally. And I see that the power in our time has been like Me Too, Black Lives Matter, Extinction
Yeah.
Rebellion, Refugees Welcome, Minister for
It's really come
Poverty,
up.
free school
Mm.
meals. They're all run by people. The big
Yeah.
campaigns of our life are not run by unions, they're not run by political movements. They're run by people like you and me, our neighbours, our
Yep.
friends. And that's the
Yep.
way that we're going to change the world, by doing our bit in our own communities. We're all
In our
anarchists,
community.
anarchists, really.
Great. So as well, now, Ray, I'm thankful for what you've asked me. So now I'm going to give you some trivial questions, which
Right,
I've done
okay.
myself.
Right,
Right.
okay.
Right. I hope you're prepared, Ray, because it could
I'm
be
always
very
prepared.
saucy and
Yeah.
it could be very not saucy. So,
Right.
so first of all, I would like you to choose a question from 1 to 12. I want you to choose three. So you can up to 1 to 12, a number from 1 to 12.
3, 7,
Three.
12. Three.
Wait. One at a time. Wait. So our first one is number 3. Are you sure you want 3 though, Ray?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, Ray.
I'm
Number
going to
3
regret
out of
this. I
my
sense
question.
it already. I sense
Did
I'm
you?
going to regret this already.
No, you won't. No, they're just trivial. Okay.
Okay.
What are you scared of and why? Mm.
Oh, that's a really good question. You know, for
Yeah.
a long time, I was scared of the dark, and
Yeah.
I used to
Say-
look under my bed every night. And because of my childhood, I couldn't
Mm.
bear silence. And so I used to always play
Mm.
Pink Floyd, Dark Side of the Moon, to help me sleep at night. And it
Yeah.
wasn't until I was about 45, after all my work, that I suddenly realized I love silence. So I spent 45 years
Mm.
terrified of silence. And now in my older years, I
No,
find silence the most wonderful thing.
isn't it just, especially when you get to an age, you just need that peace. I do anyway, you
Yeah,
know.
yeah, yeah.
Right. Okay, my dear. So you said 3. What was your next number?
7.
7. Now, Ray, let me just ask you, are you sure you really want 7?
A gypsy a long time ago told me number 7 was my lucky number. And
Yeah,
one
okay.
of the places I lived, and bizarrely, I lived at, 87 Bannerman House, 47 Malmsey House.
Oh, all the
7
sevens.
has always been quite important, 7 Peaks
Okay.
Road.
Oh, all right. Well, number 7 out of my fun question is favorite country and why?
Favorite country that's white?
No, favorite country and why? What's your
All right.
favorite country and why?
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I'm going to say something which I've never been, but I'm going to say this
Ah,
for a reason. My most
yes.
favorite country is Yemen, and
Yemen.
Yemen in the Middle East. It's at war at the moment with Saudi Arabia,
Yeah.
and the reason I love Yemen is it's an extraordinarily beautiful country, and through my work with the
Mm,
food bank and my book Food Bank Britain, I was invited to co-host a radio show in Marbella on Talk Radio for nearly 2 years. And during that
mm.
period, I was doing a radio show about world defense. So it was like Radio 4, but instead of doing 2 minutes, we had 15 minutes on all the subjects that I cared about, that were passionate to me. And during this period,
Yeah.
I wanted to cover the stories of Yemen. And a friend of mine
Ah,
on Twitter recommended a guy called Hisham Al-Amishi. And so I got in touch with him and I interviewed him. And I didn't want the usual people you get on the radio and the TV. I wanted people that people could relate to, that weren't the usual suspects, that had heart, that had humor, that had real, grassroots, in their blood. And so I found this man. He was a father, 2 kids. He wasn't a politician, but he had wit and he had real good clarity of English. And so I had him on my show for a few times, and it was so good talking about Yemen and how wonderful his country was, and he'd share short films about how beautiful Yemen is, that he became very famous. He was picked up by The Guardian, CNN, and became hugely famous. And then out of the blue, he got kidnapped by the Houthis and snatched off the street because he was so famous. And Ray, people said to me around the world, Ray, you need to do something. And I felt guilty because his profile had been made possible by my radio show. And so I set up this hashtag saying Free Hisham. And it built globally. We had questions raised in the American Senate. It was raised in the House of Parliament in London. We built this, global movement calling his release. We had a Twitter hour once a week. I lobbied the Saudi Arabian embassy, the Yemens. I did everything. Then one day, nothing was working. And somebody said to me, Ray, why don't you just contact the Houthis? They said, everybody's got a Twitter account. If Trump's got a Twitter account, everybody's got a Twitter account. So I tweeted the leader of the Houthis in Yemen, not expecting anything. And 2 weeks later, he'd checked me out, and the leader of the Houthis got back to me and said, let's talk. And so, bizarrely, I negotiated the release of Hisham from a Yemen cell and got him out of Yemen through social media and through the power of my activism and my love of Yemen. And Hisham then came to London. We met and we had a really lovely time in London. And now he works for the United Nations. And after the war is over, he has a real good chance of being Yemen's next president. And he's not corruptible, he's decent and he's fair. And all that started and made possible because my work at a food bank and my need to give platforms like you are to me of people with interesting voices and viewpoints that we all need to talk about and share. So even though Yemen is a long way away, it's a country we should all visit, because I think that we always take safe options like go to Spain or we go to France. And really the world's a bigger place, and we need to discover how other people live and see other life, other countrysides and how other people cope with all sorts of issues. And Yemen is the country that really stole my heart through Yemen and through Hisham.
Oh, the break's still going. 1 sec. Oh, dear. One sec. Okay, decent lighting. Okay, we'll get there. We'll get there. Ray, welcome back. All right.
I've now got no volume. I would like question 12, but I'm not hearing you at the moment.
Wait. You sound... Hold on. Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now. That's great.
Oh, it sounds... what's the word? It sounds very muffly.
It sounds very muffled. Okay. So I'll be happy for question 12 for my next question.
Okay. You want number 12?
Yes.
Ha! Trust you, Ray. Hi, Tony. Hi. Hi. I'm coming back to you, Tony. I'm going to introduce... I'm just going to do a question with Ray, number 12. So listen out. So Ray, what's number 12? Ray, my dear Ray. Okay, Ray, you sure you...
Hang on a minute. I'm in a bit of a state of shock. I'm now on TV with a goddess and a princess. How often?
Honestly, huh? Let's give ourselves a round of applause for that. Come on. So Ray has chose number 12 of my questions. Okay, Ray, this is your final question. I hope you're ready for it. Here it goes. If you could be an animal, what would you be and why?
I would be a cat because I could sleep all day. I could have my eyes and look all what's going on and enjoy the fact that strangers will always be giving me a stroke and a treat.
That's marvelous. Thank you so much, Ray. Thank you very, very much for answering my fun questions. So now, stay there. I'm going to introduce Tony. Welcome, Tony Ann. How are you?
I'm well, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Well. Oh, you're welcome. Thank you for joining. So, everybody on Facebook and YouTube and around the world, my next guest is Tony Ann. I'll tell you a little bit about her. She is a food poverty activist who's training to manage CAF's Place. And she's doing the project while doing qualifications with Centrepoint. Welcome, Tony. Welcome. Tell us more about yourself, my dear.
So I'm 25. I have been a food poverty activist since 2015. So since meeting Ray and learning about the bigger issues with social injustice, food insecurity, food waste as well, and just finding out about how food poverty and poverty as a whole affects not just parts of Africa and the Caribbean as was shown on television, but it's right here at home in Britain as well.
Yes. So earlier on, Ray was telling me his background story, that he was homeless and he went through his own journey. What was your journey? What made you come into this or inspired you to come into this? Have you got a journey?
Yes. So for me, my journey was at the age of 19, I had my first job and I have chronic health conditions. So I became more sick. Unfortunately, I lost employment. I was on benefit and I wasn't getting a lot of benefit due to my age. I had, had my own flat, a hostel at the time, and I just couldn't cope with the amount that I was getting, live on, pay bills, all of that. And I was diabetic as well, which I'm now pre-diabetic. But back
Oh,
then,
well done.
thank you.
Yeah.
Then I was like, you know, on borderline of being insulin, but I was diet controlled. So eating and eating right was very important.
Yes.
I got to the point where I had no food, like I just had nothing. I tried to, you know, pay all my bills, buy food. I just ran out, I had nothing. I became really
Yes.
desperate and I put up a ad on the internet, just trying to be as factual as possible, but also asking for help for people, you know, from people
Yes.
that are local to me. And I did get a few people that replied, but within that, I got a lot of abuse as well, which also made me think about why would people react in such a way when someone is simply just saying, hey, I'm in this position at this time. Are you able to
Yes.
help me? You know, Ray was one of the people that replied to me, and he was one of the only people to ask me, what kind of food do I eat? Do I have any allergies? He made me feel like a proper human being, a real person. At that time,
Yes.
I ran out of food bank vouchers, and even the food bank I was going to, they just wasn't giving me food that was nutritional for me. There was a lot of
Yes.
things that I couldn't have or couldn't eat, but out of desperation, I would take it and I would consume it because I had nothing else and I didn't want to seem, you know, ungrateful. But in
Yes.
turn,
Yes.
was making me sick. So, you know, it was this horrible, vicious cycle. But from meeting
Yes.
Ray and, you know, learning about We Care Food Bank and all the work that he does and what they do, it really inspired me to, you know, be the change that I want to see in the world. So I started with
Yeah.
myself and now I help to tell other people.
Oh, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. So I found out did you know about Cass Place, her history? I found out about it today. I didn't know she existed. I didn't know her background. And hearing it was that was inspirational this morning, hearing that, you know? So when you
Yeah,
found out, how did you feel? Knowing that this woman went for all these obstacles and done so much. How did it make you feel as a woman yourself?
I was astounded, to be honest with you. One, I was shocked that we didn't know about her already. You know, it took Ray 5 years of research, you know, off his own back, trying to find as much things as possible about her.
Yes.
It's like when you really hear her story and read the book Liberty and The Last Queen of Scotland, you really
Yes.
see that there are people out there that are individuals that aren't born into what we say is nobility or royalty. They are just
Yes.
normal citizens, you know, that are trying to fight for civil rights and for other people. It gives you faith in humanity. It really sparks the fire back in you. Like Ray said before we went on the break, he said we are all anarchists
Yes.
because we are trying to
Yes, I
all
like that.
change.
You know,
And
I'm going to wear my anarchy hair now. I'm going to be walking out there saying, yeah, that's right, I am. You know, I am.
we march to the rhythm of our own drums, but I think we are
Yeah.
also people that march together. And that is what
Yes.
Catherine's story tells you and shows you, just from a wee little Scottish woman, you know, that came to this country. She rose up and she took social injustice and showed the world and London what real change and community can do.
Yes. So the question I asked Ray earlier on, I'm going to ask you the same thing. Do you think the work that you're doing addresses the problem? You yourself.
I believe it does. It does
That's good.
because it highlights the issues that are there. It also
Yes.
shows people that this can be done in a way where you don't need to start out with lots of money or have a massive headquarters or a base. Cass Place in itself is set up in a way where the model can be done by anyone. Any community
Okay.
can take it over. It's something that you can do with a table, chair, and a phone. So, you know,
Wow.
you can just literally use your phone to do internet advice and help people with welfare advice and housing. You can find things
Yes.
to cook or create like bric-a-brac or make small meals and sell to sustain your project. And then from there, you can
Yes.
buy food to help sustain your community and, you know, help other people and find things by upcycling. So there's things that we can actually do. And I think that with Cass Place, it also shows people in the community that there are people here for you. And there might be sometimes, you know, a lot of us, we say that is one idea, but we have all had the same idea. It's just taken, you know, someone to come forward and say this can be done. Let's do it together. So I think it's an amazing thing that we do, and we definitely highlight the issues.
Great, that is great. So as well, how long have you been involved in this work, Tony? How long has it been? I mean, you're only a baby, you're 25. So how long have you been with this? You could be my daughter.
I mean, so I started out as a member. So I started out, like I said, somebody that needed help from We Care. From then, over the 2 years after that, I progressed to being a volunteer. You know, like I mentioned, I have chronic health conditions, and I think that's also why I feel so comfortable with We Care, because, of course, they care, but they also are understanding in the sense that things are not, there's no pressure. It's all about mental health. It's all about wellness. It's also about well-being. So 3-4 years down into the journey, I'm able to offer 2 days here, 1 day here, and help out. And now I'm able to, you know, even further down in the line, I'm able to actually help manage the project and run the project as well, and being trained to do so. So for me, I'd say the past, it's been since about 2017 or so. So the past 4 years has been.
Yeah, that's good. That's really good. Well done. Well done, you. So now, thank you so much for sharing that. Now you're going to get the same as what Ray got. You know, there's no favoritism here. So I have 1 to 12 questions. These are just fun questions, yeah? So choose your number, and you can't have. Did you hear any of Ray's answers?
I did, and I was going to pick number 12 because I like that.
Don't pick them. So you cannot choose 3, 12, or 7. So choose any 3 slowly out of 12. Go on.
Number 5.
Number 5, Tony. Now, Tony, are you sure you want number 5? You know, it's my fun questions. Are you sure you want number 5?
I'm not sure. Let's go.
Yeah, you're going to go for it. Okay. Well, she's going to go for it. So, number 5 is your favorite genre of music, and why?
I don't have a favorite genre. I would say any. I love all music. I love punk. I love rock. I love indie. I love, you know, soca. I just love any genre. Country. So I love everything. I love music and all genres, because anything that sounds good is good. Art is open to interpretation, and music is a different form of art. It connects people, and it really makes you feel. It can make you feel amazing. It can make you feel sad. It can change your mood depending on what you're listening to. It can soothe you. It can put you to sleep. Music is just such a beautiful thing.
Lovely. Thank you, Tony, for that. Now, what's your next number?
Number 9.
Number 9, Tony. Oh, Tony, what a question. Anyway, here we go. Do you prefer cash to use or card, and why?
I would say cash.
Why?
Because I think the age and I think the society that we're moving with, I think if we were maybe 20 years ago, I probably would have answered the question differently. I would have said card, but a little bit more obliviously. Now, you know, you can be tracked by the way that you spend on your card. I mean, you know, a lot of people don't realize, but the bank actually hold on to part of your funds, and they almost borrow out of everyone's account. So, you know, when you spend fast, sometimes that's why the bank will contact you and be like, hey, why are you spending so quickly? It's yours, but it's ours. You know, we need a bit of
I'm glad you brought that up. So people who don't know that, I'm glad you brought that up. So people would have heard this now. So that's good to know.
Yeah, so for me, think with cash in general, it is something that it doesn't lose value. If it's £10, this is exactly £10. From a card, things with interest can be applied and you don't see it, and direct debits and all sorts of things can start to happen with cards. But I think cash is just easy, straight to the point, and easy to use.
Okay, thank you very much, my dear. And last but not least, your last number.
Let's go.
I like that look. Number?
Let's go with 10.
You're going to go for 10. Oh, okay. You go for 10. No problem. Favorite movie? I know, I make it sound so intriguing, but it's just fun questions, you know? So favorite movie or TV program, and why? What is your favorite show, and why is it that you like that? Does it bring something to you? Does it make you feel away? Does it make you feel great? You know?
I actually have a few, but I would say when you say that to me, I think the first one that pops up is Designated Survivor, which is on Netflix. It wasn't completed, unfortunately, so they stopped it after the second season. But the reason I like it is because it's quite different. A lot of the times in movies and TV, it's remade things. It's, you know, the same vampire shows, the same romance stories. Designated Survivor shows you things from a different perspective. So it's still a presidential show, but it shows you the plan. It shows you the execution of that plan. It shows you a different perception. I do like another one called Money Heist, which is it is, you know, quite astounding. The acting, the way it was filmed, you know, the cast are quite diverse in their acting skills, and the story just completely pulls you in. So I recommend that to anyone.
Thank you so much. Well, I want to say thank you both. If you've got any last pointers, please talk it up. Please do. I've asked all my questions. I've listened to you. I'm very grateful. Ray, do you have any let's be like Jerry Springer, the last moments. You remember that one when he said, my final moment? Do you have a final moment?
Yeah, the last thing I'd say to anybody listening is that poverty is something that many people are too proud to ask. When you visit your friends, your family, your parents, never be too proud to peer in their cupboards and look in their fridge and see whether they've got enough to eat. And because quite often those going hungry are closer to home than we think.
Wow.
So that's my thought.
That's your final thought. Thank you so much for that, Ray. And Tony, do you have your final thought, like Jerry Springer? But it's going to be Goddess Jazzy's final thought. Come on.
So my Jazzy final thought would just be to treat people how you want to be treated. Remember, we are going through really hard times, and just reach out to each other, be kind, and just help wherever you can.
Yes, that is beautiful. I want to thank you both for coming on this morning. Thank you for sharing your story, Ray. Thank you for showing me at 25 what you're doing. That's amazing. I'm really proud of you, you know? Ray, thank you so much for giving me history, which I didn't know about. I never knew about, you know, Kath's Place on Kath Duncan. Is that your book? I hope you will sign me a copy, though. Yeah, put it up there. Plug it up.
Scotland. The Last Queen of Scotland. You can get it on Amazon. You can get it anywhere.
Yeah.
And the profit from it funds our food bank. And it's like a lot of working class stories. It's not just like one aspect of her life. It's the whole of her life over 40 years. So it's a must. You know, any woman in your life will love this book.
Yes.
Valentine's, what a great gift to give to a girl that you love. And learn your history. Black lives matter, but all women matter.
That's love. That is beautiful. Beautiful. That is beautiful. Thank you so much, Ray. And I do hope to, when this is all over, be able to meet you all in person, you know, and have another chat.
Group hug.
Yeah, a big one. You know, that massive one. You need a massive group hug, you know.
Bring it in.
Maybe you could join us. We're going to do the Jerusalem challenge next Saturday. So
yes, please.
We're doing the Jerusalem. So it's 2:00 next Saturday at
Is it?
Kath Place. But you've got to know the moment. So when you come, Come and do a
I
bit
don't
of
know.
Jerusalem.
I don't know how to do it. That means I have to practice from now. Okay, I'm down for that.
It's on YouTube.
Yeah.
Is it?
We're
Oh, and I
filming
love.
next
Okay, I'm
Saturday.
gonna try. I'm gonna come. Yeah.
Good.
And if I get out of sync, don't laugh at me. I'll try and get back into it. You know? Yeah. Yeah.
Don't worry, Tony will whip you into shape.
Please, Tony, please, please. I need it. I need it. Thank you so much from the bottom of my heart for coming in, spending your time with me. I appreciate it. YouTube fans will appreciate it. Facebook, Twitter, everyone. It's gone out worldwide now. So you had your best makeup on, Ray. I'm happy.
Of course.
So everyone saw you, and I'm so grateful from my heart. I really am grateful, and I look forward to seeing you next Saturday at the Jerusalem. I'm telling you.
We can't wait. We can't wait.
Yeah.
We're getting ready.
Look at you, Ray. Come on. Thank you so much. Have a very blessed day today. Enjoy yourself and keep smiling. That's my last word of today. Is just keep smiling. Say hello to someone. You know, give someone a compliment. If you're walking on the street, supermarket. Do you know what? Before I go, a homeless man, he was beautiful. He asked me to be his Valentine. Yeah. He said, will you be my Valentine? I said, what about my partner? He said, I don't care about your partner. I said, oh, well, I'll take that. I will take that. So I'm going to go and find him and get a rose and give it to him. Yeah. He made my day. Yeah. So anyway, guys, thank you so much. Yeah, thank you ever so much. If you got anything more to chime in, you're welcome. We still got a bit of time. If not, I'm going to love you and leave you till next time. Yeah. Thank you so much. And I see you Saturday. Mwah. All's well. Yeah.
Bye.
Mwah. Take care. Take care. Thank you so much. Take care, Ray. Lots of love. Take care. Bye.